So, hey, I've been learning Chinese since the end of last year, and I'm just making this vlog because I want to look back on this the same way I look back on my piano videos. And look, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my own time. I just wanted something quick that I can look back onto and think about, my journey so far. Yeah, so when I first started learning Chinese, everyone was like, okay, why are you learning Chinese? Woo, a white person learning Chinese, woo. Um, and look, the thing is, okay, so first of all, I'm learning at the moment by just reading and listening on apps like Link, Do Chinese, and I've also used Hello Chinese to read and listen. That's my main focus. There's YouTube videos as well. Like I just look up comprehensible input and I do that. The stuff I'm taking in at the moment is at a HSK2, HSK3 level, so I'm at a low intermediate level, and I've reached this within less than a year. My reading ability is quite good, and same my listening. My listening's okay. If I've got this transcript or like the written language down and I'm listening to it, then I done. I can't really listen without that. Um, Also, yeah, speaking is terrible. Speaking and typing, terrible. I'm not even gonna go. Well, at the very beginning, I did try to attempt to write it, but I just realized, yeah, it's a waste of time. Writing Chinese is incredibly difficult. And yeah, good luck with that. So I don't want to go too in detail of things here, but like another thing, or a big thing that I came across, it wasn't really until half, like I read this stuff and I watched videos on it and I watched talks like on this guy called Stephen Krashen and the input hypothesis, right? And also watched videos on Steve Kaufman. Uh, so Steve Kaufman, the polyglot. But basically, I didn't actually have faith in it, and I don't have faith in myself. So a lot of language learning is about having faith in yourself, knowing that you can achieve something. So I do believe that, like, let's say you're into sport, or let's say you're into music, and you play different musical instruments, or you play different sports, and you've achieved different things throughout your life that are really, really difficult. You've had all lots of different hard jobs. You have to train yourself to get those skills, like coding software or doing hard maths like calculus. I think people like this are going to be quite good at learning a language because at the end of the day, a language is something that you have to do every single day, and it's a continuous challenge. And it's going to get harder and harder and harder. The same way maths, it's just going to keep getting harder and harder and harder. Um, it's never ending, really. Yeah, getting back to it, I didn't really have faith in the input method. But I've been following these short stories. I've been reading short stories, since probably May this year. And yeah, it's an incredibly powerful way to learn. Although I will say that I disagree with Matt versus Japan and the AJAT method. The AJAT method, Japanese, wait, I think it's Japanese all the time. I don't know, but like the refold method. So like what I'm seeing a lot of is people who talk about immersion, and then they say that like through immersion and using flashcards, you're going to be able to speak eventually. Now, what I'm doing is a bit different. I'm using comprehensible input, which is, C plus one, comprehensible input plus one. So like going one level above yourself and also doing some stuff at your own level. So going at your own level would be extensive input. Going above your level is intensive input. But see, what Refold is recommending is they don't really talk about reading as much. They really talk about just watching anime and TV shows and stuff like that, and using flashcard decks alongside. I don't really believe in this because look, I had a trip to Shanghai recently, well not recently, a few months ago, and it didn't go too well because you can't just expect all these voices around you and all this written language just to jump into your brain. There needs to be some level of comprehension, and you fill in the blanks. Um, because at the level of just watching a TV show and just staring at it, staring at the Chinese subtitles, listening to the audio, just going in raw, um, it's incomprehensible. It is not comprehensible at all. Yeah, I guess some people would say, okay, that this is compelling inputs, and I've got the motivation to learn it. Well, look, this is going to take too long, okay? And there is, in Chinese, there is definitely a lot of really good short stories designed for readers, learners trying to read, yeah. Um, but jumping into native material too early, I do think is just, yeah, it's dangerous. I do think when you get later on in your learning journey with the learning material, then yes, you will need to make the jump because a lot of native material is going to be around 2,500 to 3,000 characters minimum. Yeah, if it's made for, a teenager or an adult. If it's made for a child, probably a bit less. But look, you regardless of anything, eventually later on you will need to make that jump. But making that jump too early is just ridiculous. So that's something that I've experienced myself. Um, I also paid a tutor at the start of this year. She was very helpful. She got me practicing the pinyin chart, going through my syllables, my phonemes. But the thing is, I can't really talk every day to someone in Chinese because I don't live in China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines. I don't live in Asia right now. I live in Oceania, Australia. There are Chinese people around me, but I don't work with them. My girlfriend right now, she is Australian, white Australian, and so I don't really have anyone to talk to in Chinese an hour or 2 hours every day. So I'm mostly just focusing on input through audio and through reading. Plus, I would say the jump into that level, like the reason why I waited until around May this year and have been learning since December last year is because to begin reading these short stories, you really do need at least 150 characters to actually jump in and start going. Because I think Mandarin Companion, like their lowest level is around 150 characters. Same with Do Chinese, it's around 150. I think Hello Chinese, they do some short stories at around 70 or 80, but it's very basic stuff. It's not very compelling. Um, Plus, I also wanted to point out some other things I noticed. So, having never really learned a language and spending a lot of time around people who just know English and only English, there's one big issue I came across. So there's a thing called sequential bilingualism and simultaneous bilingualism. So simultaneous bilingualism would be, let's say someone's in India and they grow up learning English, Tamil, and Hindi. Okay, they got these three languages, but they didn't sequentially do them. They learned them all together at once. Um, English probably isn't spoken in their family. It's probably pushed on at school by educational policies and teachers, instructors, and stuff like that. And also the government as well, like government papers, documents, stuff like that. Businesses as well. But again, the family, like the friends, they're probably speaking Hindi and Hindi, Urdu, Telugu, whatever. They're speaking those languages. But then they've also had to, by force, learn English because it's a part of the systems they live in. But it was in their environment. So sequential bilingualism is where I am at right now, right? So that's the thing. Like I'm going from English to another language by myself in a heavy English environment, a very homogeneous environment. So this is not the same thing as someone in, say, Japan who had Japanese and then they learned English at school, right? I mean, that still is sort of a bit more sequential, but it's still not the same thing because if you look at a person's brain in an MRI scan and they learn English at like an international school, but they've also got Japanese going on too, these two languages, they almost are operating as a native language. Whereas my brain does not want to pick it up. It's actually perceived as a bit different. Um, I don't know if you can achieve like native level as an adult. I don't have the answer for that. But let's say, I've been experiencing this at work. Someone will say, okay, they know Tamil, Hindi, English, or they know, Afrikaans, English, French, and then they'll say, oh, say this in that language. Can you talk and say that? But the thing is, you got these four communication like parameters. So you got speaking, listening, reading, writing. So I can type or write. I can speak, listen, whatever, right? So you got these four parameters. But like these four parameters are not all the same really. So I think reading is the easiest. Then you got listening. I mean, listening and reading, they're super easy. But then you got stuff like typing. Typing is, I think, still a lot easier than speaking. and then speaking would be the hardest. That's that in regards to a sequential bilingual person like myself. I'm pointing this out because, like, getting advice from someone who hasn't learned another language that isn't really English as an adult is not really the same as, say, getting advice from someone who learned languages as a child or learned languages as a teenager, especially if it's English, because English is in their environment, their parents probably know English, especially Europeans. So I'm just putting this out there because make sure you know who you're getting your advice from. Um, Also, my final thoughts for this video would be Chinese, yeah, sure, it's intimidating, but what I found is that the characters, you do remember it like that. It does become easier and easier, especially if you make it a habit to be doing it every single day. Um, Learning context. So yes, while yes, I can read and listen, my output skills are really bad. I'm planning on doing this later on because at the end of the day, I'm not interested in speaking or output right now. It would be cool to do that with people at the shops or at restaurants or online and meet them in real life. But frankly, my vocabulary that I can actively recall is quite low. So I've got so when it comes to reading and listening, that's passive recall. But then when you're typing, writing, speaking, that's active recall. And you've also got to put all these words out into a grammatical pattern. I can't really do it that fast. One thing I can do is I can listen to the sounds, the unique sounds, the syllables in a person's voice and go, okay, I know that word, but I don't know that word, but I can actually hear it. I can look it up, write out the pinyin on the phone and see what it is. So this is the thing. Like a lot of people have assumptions of learning a language, and people they don't realize how different it is if you're an adult and how weird it is if you're an adult. Plus, there's so many parameters that you're working on. Plus, it is hard to learn a language if you're an Anglophone because everyone is like, why are you doing it? Very few people ever do because they'll only ever go to tourist zones if they go overseas. Like, they'll go to Paris or they'll go to Berlin, but there's so many English speakers in these areas. Very few people will go to, say, let's say Harbin in China, or let's say they will go to a small town in Vietnam that is not a tourist trap. Like a lot of Australians go to Bali, but Bali is just English everywhere. So I understand why they do this. They want something easy and escape from work. They don't necessarily want a hard, difficult time, but I guess it also does depend on their personality. Yeah, and I think I'm just going to leave it there.